I think about that river scape, lakeside, and the walking trail or walking path, the sidewalk that runs along the Avon River. I think about that band shell that's somewhere over behind us. So then I always connect those kinds of places with the Santa Claus parade, the Swan Parade, of course, the Ribs and Blues Festival at the band shell, the Pride Parade. I mean, that's nascent. They're just getting off the ground. This would have been the third year for Pride.
And I've marched in both of them up until now.
We don't call it a march, Mayor Matheson. We call it a parade.
Okay, I've been in both parades.
Wow, really? Because I tweeted out.
You tweeted out last year. I wasn't there.
So where the hell were you? Okay, but so all of those kinds of events, and I guess a couple of things come to mind. First of all, how do those organizations and their events get rescued? I mean, are they going to have to, sink or swim on their own?
No, every year a number of them survive because of city contribution towards them. They also have, though, a commercial component to them where businesses have helped sponsor. Mm-hmm. So the Blues and Ribs Fest in the past had been provided some seed funding from the city. They've done very well on their own to make up the vast volume of the revenue from ticket sales and participants.
What about Summer Music Festival, Music on the Barge?
So the HMS Razzmatazz is a good example. They survived. This year they were going to get a matching grant from the city, $5,000 from us, and they raised $5,000, and they were well on their way to doing that. The Summer Music Festival would receive somewhere in the area of $15,000 to $20,000 from the city, and their budget is in excess of $200,000. So everybody had stepped up along the way to cover themselves. This year, the grant money's already gone out. We've asked any of them that had not spent the money to return it.
Because they're not going to have these events, are they?
No, the Razzmatazz won't go on, the Blues and Ribs Fest has been canceled, Summer Music has taken a pause. So, if they don't come back next year, we're still going to have a grant component to our budget, because that is part of the quality of life in Stratford, part of the civic life, part of the civic responsibility we have to support those initiatives, and we'll continue to do so.
But aren't some of them possible to hold, like Santa Claus Parade? I mean, we could be at a different place come next November. Couldn't we have certain public events where, as long as we do what we apparently are being quite good at doing, keeping our 2-meter distance, why couldn't we have a Pride Parade?
We still could. It comes down to people being comfortable enough to go out, and the organizers being prepared to be bold enough to take it on. We go back to contact tracing being good, and testing. And if we can get those in line, then getting to groups of 100 or 200 becomes easy. And I think you could still do some of those initiatives yet this summer if we can continue moving along in that way.
We have a storied junior hockey franchise in this city. You were at one time the board chair for the Stratford Warriors, the Culletons at the time. What's going to happen to the hockey team?
Well,
that's what, about 1,100 to 1,500 will go in there on a
Friday night
or Sunday?
So right now it looks like Hockey Canada is not in a position to allow hockey to go on this fall. You could see a dark season across minor hockey and junior hockey at least until Christmas, depending on where the pandemic ends up. I think if that hits, that will be a very big blow to the psyche of this community, which is embedded in hockey, going back to Howie Morenz in the early 1920s, known as the Stratford Streak or the Mitchell Meteor. And I think those types of challenge, people go, wow, this is really for real if you're not playing hockey in Stratford come the fall. I think the other problem will be it'll be a big blow to girls and boys hockey programs in this community. And I think it'll lead to a real challenge of what do you fill that void with.
I'm just going to inject a little bit of my own observation. I've attended a lot of games, and I'll see some of the same faces in the locker room or the gym at the Y's. I'll see at a Friday night game, and these are men and women, boys and girls, many of whom live with intellectual disabilities, and they live. Yeah.
Absolutely. Our fan base, community living in Stratford is a big part of it. We give a lot of tickets away to community living, and the support workers bring them down to the game. There are seniors that is their night out of the week because they've been going to the arena for years.
Do you worry about how they're going to do in the fall when the hockey season should start?
I worry about that. I also worry about the financial viability of a hockey team. It is a community-owned team, meaning it has no ownership other than whoever the trustees are on the board at the time.
Can it survive?
It can for probably a year, but if they don't have program sales where the Stratford businesses advertise the program, or they're not buying ring boards, or they're not buying, they don't have jersey sponsors. They have 5 of those at $5,000 each. They don't have somebody sponsor the home ice with their logo on it. That becomes problematic. It is a $300,000 proposition to run a junior B team for a season and be competitive.
Well, okay, lots of NHL players or former NHL players own junior hockey teams. I can think of one off the top of my head. The Kamloops Blazers have an ownership group there of retired NHLers. So we've had a number of players come through here who played in the NHL and professional hockey abroad. You and I have talked about a number of names like Eddie Olczyk, Tim Taylor, a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, and Chris Pronger, Rob Blake. What about these guys? Would you know these guys? Could you step up and say help?
You could, but if they don't have a league to play in, is the other problem. So first thing we need is help. Hockey Canada.
You need the league.
Hockey Canada needs to say, okay, all the branches of hockey across the country, you can organize and play under these conditions. Then you need the Ontario Hockey Federation to say, okay, Minor Hockey Alliance of Ontario, Ontario Minor Hockey, this is what you need to do. Ontario Hockey Association, this is what you need to do. Then from there, you need the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, which is the collection of 20-some junior B teams across the province to continue to say, okay, there's enough of us viable to continue on to do that. And then if we had a financial condition, sure, I'd be willing to step up and talk to Ed Olczyk, his brother Ricky Olczyk, who worked for the NHLPA, Brian Slominski, any of those gentlemen to say, would you step up and help us through? We have a very strong alumni network. We've never made it about money with them. We've made it about tradition and pride, and I'm sure they'd step up if we asked them to help us financially. But at the end of the team, there's something about being a community-owned team that thrives because the community cares and puts money into it.
I just thought about something. Have our property values cratered?
Yeah, well, if they've cratered, they've all cratered across the province, and that's why the province put on hold the 2020 valuation assessment update, which is due this January. They've delayed it for another year.
Do you mind if I give you a half-baked theory that
Sure.
it's been swilling around in my head for a while? I predict, and nobody's paying me on the speaker circuit as a futurist, but I predict that people are going to want to get out of the bigger cities. Let's just confine ourselves to southern Ontario and get into smaller cities, large towns and small cities like Stratford, because it's Stratford, because it's not Liberty Village in Toronto, and all of those very, very tight and confined spaces. And we're going to see an influx of people here looking to buy or to rent. I predict alongside that the face of our city may change finally, and we'll see a more diverse looking city. Do you think that's going to happen? Is it already happened?
So it's already happened. I believe that, and we've seen it in your neighborhood and other neighborhoods, where people have bought a home in Stratford and it's their cottage. They've been priced out of the market in Haliburton or the Muskokas. They've chosen that Stratford is really what they like. They're an arts and culture person, they're a quality of life, they're a biker, they like theater, they like cuisine, and they've chosen to buy a home in Stratford and create a cottage here.
But they're part-timers.
Exactly. And I think what you're going to see now is the next phase of that, which we call Lone Eagles. They can work from home, they can work from anywhere, they can work for a big corporation, they can be self-employed, they have a great internet connection, they have the ability to go into the city if they need to, and they want a quality of life, and they want to actually be able to go outside in these pandemic times and be able to get 6 feet from somebody else. And I think that's going to actually be the calling card. That's one of the reasons, and I know it's going into the smart city piece, that I've advocated for having fiber at every home, the need to have that, because in the future, that is going to be the pipeline that not only brings all the data, but it's actually going to commercialize so many things people are doing.
Okay, and So then, in 10 years' time, my gosh, I keep calling on you to predict, but the sign outside the city says, I think it still says 32,000, population 32,000. By the way, is that accurate?
Well, you have to talk to the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, who gets their numbers from StatsCan, who I don't think they update them very often.
Where do you think we're at?
I think we're probably closer to 34,000.
Okay, where do you think we'll be in 10 years?
If we're lucky, we'll be probably 37.
But if the festival doesn't rebound in the next 3 to 5 years, like it will need to, could we see a tumble, a decline? You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we're close enough to the Golden Triangle, the KW, Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, Guelph area, London to the southwest, that we'll actually have the opportunity to continue to have employment.
Fair enough. What's your style? What's your philosophy and style of leadership?
Mine is very much about providing hope, vision, encouragement, and to move people on their own ability to do things. I don't want to be the doer. I'm not going to be the guy. I'm going to help support, identify solutions, how we can get there, but then turn it over to the people to own the process.
I find that's interesting. Let me tell you why. My impression of you since the time that we moved here, and I've followed your career closely, even before we moved to Stratford, because I've always been interested in civic politics, is I've always seen you as a connector, a person who connects others. So, check. You just mentioned that. I've also seen you as somebody who likes big ideas and smart cities.
Yep.
Check. I've also seen you as somebody who likes to have your fingers in a lot of pies. And, you know, the critics would say, and I've been one of them over the years, oh, Dan Matheson is a bit of a control freak. How do you respond to that when you hear somebody say that about you?
So I often
You're the alpha.
Yeah, I often tell people, at the end of the day, whatever goes wrong in the city ends up on my desk and at my feet. I'm the guy that normally has to stand in front of a camera, talk to a reporter, go to a meeting, and take some ownership. So while it looks like I'm a control freak, I will often get involved with the department and say, look, here's your problem.
Yeah.
You need a solution. Here's what's being said in the public.
Does it bug you when people say that about you?
No, not at all. You know why? At the end of the day, they could say a lot worse, and I've been called worse by better people.
What have you learned about yourself as a leader?
I've learned that people look to me to provide them hope. They look to me to provide them some sense of, okay, can you help us understand this? So I have to really think about strategically, and then give us some ideas of how we're going to get through this. And often I find the city staff here are good, our community partners are great. A lot of them rise to the challenge. They just want to know, are we in this together? Do you agree with what the problem is? Do I agree with the problem is? And how do you see us getting through it? Most of them love to then say, I'm going to go away, I'm going to sit with my group, and I'm going to come back with a plan.
Okay.
And the Economic Recovery Task Force is a good example of that. I'm not sitting on the task force. I made sure that from the start I didn't want any members of council on it. I want it to be grassroots, where local businesses, retail operators, tourism, they come up with the solutions. It goes through the task force, through city staff, and then on to council to be governors and to move forward, because I didn't want to blur the lines. And I want somebody who said, I spent all this time coming up with this idea, and because this one didn't like it or that one liked it more, it got a different look. So there's not a member of council sitting on the Recovery Task Force. We're waiting for recommendations from them, and that way we're sure that whatever we've chosen, it represents what the business community, what the community overall is looking for.
So people look to Mayor Dan for hope. I get that. What is it that you've learned about yourself where you've thought, in recent times, these days especially, I could work on that, that this particular crisis has tested you?
I think it's tested me that you don't control all the levers. You know, I can be as upset as I want about testing. I don't have a seat at the provincial command table.
Are you suggesting then that you need to work on patience? Because you can't, as you just say, you can't control those levers. So,
Yep. Patience is a good example. What I also,
are you an impatient guy often, or how would you describe yourself?
No, I would say that I like to have people come up with plans that are time bound and ready to move forward.
Keep up, folks. Is that kind of it?
Yeah.
Keep up?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Like, what happened since yesterday? And so one of the challenge would be, if I was sitting at that table, I can't make them do testing. I can highlight for them the concerns. I can advocate on why it makes sense. But at the end of the day, I can't change it. So what can I do otherwise, other than doing those first two things that were strategic to go actually move us forward?
So what have you learned?
What have I learned? They're amazing jugglers. Some of them have young families. Some of them have been career bureaucrats. Some have an extensive background. And I've learned that it doesn't matter what walk of life they come from, they have all achieved and are achieving more than some of the men that they would call counterparts. And it's taught me that, maybe we've stereotyped a little too long on some of these pieces.
Well, it's 2020.
Okay, Justin. But it is interesting, and I just think that for all of them, when we get into these pitched battles about what to do, and if you're going to go to war and you want somebody in your corner, I take every one of them every time. They're just as strategic, analytical, operational, visionary as any male counterpart would be in so.
What have they learned from you?
I think I try to bring to them the ability to think outside the role. That, okay, you're in a lane. Don't just think of what's in your lane. Do the scan and understand what's in the lane of everybody else, because you're probably trying to get to the same place, and if not the same place, you're probably all trying to get to 75% of the same place. So how do you cooperate between them? How do you share information? And how do you actually learn from one another?
The movers and shakers in our city, they have their own ideas, they have their own plans, they have their own agendas.
Yep.
In this time of crisis, when I think of some of these people of influence, and as I say, that suasion or that power, how do you go to them and say, we need you to step up a little bit more now? Do you do that?
Yeah, I do. And we've had the mental health fund as an example. Picked up the phone to a couple of business people and said, if you're always asking what you can do, put some money into United Way right now. There's some people that are hurting that could really benefit from having a resource available where they can get money for their heat bill or their water bill or something. There's another prominent Stratford resident who I know was asked to do some work around COVID, and they talked about the issue, and in exchange for them doing the work, a multinational corporation in Canada, instead of paying them, made a donation to the United Way in the area of $15,000.
Can you tell us more about that?
No, I because the individual didn't want to do it, but said, okay, I'll do it. And Ryan Erb could verify that.
But why don't they publicize their names? Because couldn't they be an inspiration for other people to do the same thing?
Some of them say, the reason I live in Stratford is I blend in like woodwork. And I'm not interested in I don't need the accolades. I just want to, be a contributing member of the community, and I don't need a newspaper article or a radio station story about it. I just want to do what I think's right, and support the community.
Okay, what about the other side to this? So these same people of influence, and you travel in some of these circles too, they come to you even in a time of crisis, they have their own agenda. How often have you had to say at this time, not now, we've got bigger concerns, I can't deal with your agenda right now?
Yeah, I've had to do that with some.
It takes courage with people with money.
You develop a little bit of a friendship though over time, and I've always tried to be on my authentic self. So you've often said, I hear Dan Matheson's a hothead. If I know you well,
I hear you had a temper.
Yeah.
Is it the Irish temper?
Yeah, maybe. But I'm often one of those people that if I don't agree with you, I'm not going to placate you for a long period of time to make you feel better. I'm going to vigorously debate you.
Will you do that with the people with money in this town?
Sure. And you know what? And most of them would do the same with me. And I believe that's from growing up in this town and knowing them.
You don't have to reoffer until 2022 to run for mayor again.
Yeah.
So you're really only into your second year of your fifth term, and there's always this will he or won't he about Dan Matheson.
People will have probably a 12 to 9 to 12 month preamble of whether or not I'll offer up again.
I'm hearing that you're actually not going to reoffer for a sixth term.
Well, that there's a lot of people say that. As I said, it'll be definitive for most people 9 to 12 months beforehand.
Okay, but and again, I'm not from here, but a lot of people aren't from here. But people who pay attention, even slightly so, to civic politics, provincial, federal, people like that newcomer who looks at you and sees what you do might think he's going to be recruited again to run provincially or federally. So wouldn't you be? Would you like to be?
No, I've been courted lots of times to run.
Why don't you go?
There's a difference between being mayor or being on council in this community. You make a decision, you go out, you live it within your community. I can see a decision happen. I have the utmost respect for federal and provincial members of parliament. But at the end of the day, you're here and you're one of 11 sitting around a table being integral to a decision. You can go up there and you can be one of 200 members, and maybe you're not as integral other than you were in your chair on any given day that was required for you to be there to raise your hand. And I kind of like the cut and thrust of being responsible for decisions and being sure that my voice is heard and the people I represent are.
What would it take to talk you out of that position?
You need to go federally? I don't think there's an opportunity to do that. I've had discussions with prime ministers and premiers in the past, leaders of opposition, and it's never.
Is that because of that's an issue of how Mayor Dan is popular inside the city limits versus how Mayor Dan would do outside in Perth and Wellington? Is that how it works?
No. It's my natural piece. When I was younger, I would have said I would have aspired to that. As I've been involved in local government and interacted with federal and provincial members, I have a really great appreciation and love for what we do locally, and that's really where my heart would be. And those other areas, well, very rewarding, I'm sure, for the people that are in those roles, just aren't something I aspire to.
Could this play you out? Could you get tired and quit?
No, I don't predict that the pandemic would play me out.
How's your health?
My health's great. I'm actually,
Are you energized by this, or is it tiring you out?
No, actually, I would say the first couple weeks were mentally exhausting. Now I'm out for more bike rides than I've ever been out for. Carolyn and I probably get a more regular.
This is your wife you're talking about?
Yeah, my wife. We get a much more regular walk than we would have in the past, and we've actually created more of a consistent thrust to our days with dinners and breakfasts. And in the past it would be nothing for me to leave and go to a breakfast meeting or to have a dinner meeting somewhere. And we've actually changed that a little bit. And it's something that maybe after a while you forget what that's like.
Tell me about a flash of brilliance, a big idea that you've had, let's say in the past day or two. You are an ideas guy, so what have you thought about that really excites you? But wait a minute, this is a great idea, write it down, we can do this. That's going to help us.
Out of the blue, I thought of Trudeau had announced a grant program for students that were working on volunteer projects related to COVID being able to qualify for funding. So instead of having youth sit home and collect the CERB or the Canadian University program for kids going off to school, could we reach out to the high schools who have woodworking programs, and could we get them to track down their students? And could I get some lumber donated? And could they get some volunteer pay from the federal government? And could we actually have a made in Stratford solution where kids are taking a stake in the future economy of the city? And I thought, that would be really neat, so that it's a solution that came from the task force of a resident. It went through the piece, and some youth got involved to make sure it happened, so that they understand at the end, the reason that restaurant maybe survived is they had more patio space, and I helped make this all work.
Can you make it work?
Yeah. Picked up the phone today and called the director of education. Said, would you find a way to do this? And they're going to hunt down the teachers involved and say, okay, how would we contact 10 or 12 students, and what would we do?
Give me your quick prediction on what's going to happen with the National Hockey League, please. You are a huge sports and hockey nut.
Well, I unfortunately think the NHL is going to be in a rush to preserve revenue they've received for TV rights, and they're going to make some, what I think, half-baked ideas of a hub city and try to play a bunch of games so they can put hockey on TV. I think you're going to lose the intensity that is part of hockey. I think you're going to lose what I think was the focus of a hockey season, which is whether it's the rough and toughness that go along with it. And I think they're going to actually devalue their brand more than if they just took a pause and said, you know what, 2020 is the season with an asterisk where we didn't have a Stanley Cup champion. It's no different than 2005.
Have you been in touch with Justin Bieber recently?
I have not been in touch with Justin Bieber recently.
If you had something to say to him right now about his town and COVID, what would you say? Is there anything to say to somebody like him at this point?
Well, first I'd thank him for stepping up last month and feeding the hospital workers like he did by ordering the food from Circle and being part of it. Every so often, Justin pops back in our lives with one of those very quiet, thoughtful, generous moments, and that was one of them.
So you're the keynote speaker, and I'd like to know, given what we've been going through these days, what would your message be to the assembled? And I'm thinking especially the young people.
Well, I would talk to them about that you're going to live wherever you're going to live. You're going to pick a community, and a community can be anything from your sports organization to your ethnic group, to your church group, to your volunteer, but you're going to live in a broader community as well. And make sure that you give to those communities, because that's what's actually going to enrich your life. Don't live the length of your life, live the depth and the quality of it. Make sure you do something meaningful within your community. Just don't get on the bus and go for the ride. Actually help chart the course. And I'd tell them to dream big. There's no limit to what anyone can do. It doesn't matter what they've done in the past. It's all up to them what they can do in the future.
Would you keep COVID-19 out of that address, do you think?
Well,
if it's next month.
What I'd probably do is tell them to take this opportunity to look for resilient leaders that they've seen over this time period, to think about their own life and how they've used this opportunity. And it's interesting, it's 2020. So we should all use this as a hindsight moment to say, how have I lived myself in the past? How am I going to live myself in the future? And then try to look at the improvements you can make to go forward.